Thank you so much, Mr. President and members. I stand before you as the Vice Chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus and ask for your support for SGR JR 12. 50 years ago, Congress approved the Equal Rights Amendment and began the ERA's journey for state-by-state ratification. Under our Constitution, we require 38 states to ratify for an amendment to become a part of the Constitution. We now have 38 states who have ratified the ERA as the 28th Amendment. In the last few years, Illinois, Nevada, and most recently Virginia in 2020, became the 38th and final state, achieving that necessary ratification. Yet, the federal archivist has not certified ratification or published the ERA, citing the arbitrary deadline that Congress set in one of its bills for when ratification needed to be done. Now, if you look at the history of our Constitution, there are many amendments that took years for passage and many amendments that had no deadlines, and there is nothing in our Constitution that states an amendment must be approved within a certain time period. And the ERA is not the only amendment that has needed many years for ratification. There is one that is now in the Constitution that took 200 years before it had the necessary states. The Equal Rights Amendment language is very simple. It basically states that there will be no legal discrimination based on sex, which advances justice for women and girls and gender-expansive individuals. And with the ERA as part of our Constitution, it will allow laws that perpetuate inequality or inequitable gender roles to be struck down as unconstitutional. SJR 12 urges Congress to pass H.R. 891, authored by California's own Congresswoman Jackie Speer, declaring that the ERA has met its requirements to become the 28th Amendment, and it calls on the archivist to certify and publish the ratification of the ERA. This is our moment to enshrine an explicit prohibition on sex discrimination and discrimination based simply and solely on one's gender. And with that, I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debate? Senator Razo.
Thank you, Mr. President. As chair of the Latino Caucus, it is my honor to rise today in strong support of SJR 12, calling on Congress to pass House Resolution 891 and finally formalize the approval of the Equal Rights Amendment. It is so long past time that our nation adopt this fundamental right into our Constitution, the 28th Amendment to the sacred document first ratified in 1788. Yes, California and some other states have enshrined non-discrimination and equal protection provisions into our Constitution and state laws. There still remains a fundamental need to finalize this amendment into the United States Constitution. Like other quote-unquote federal rights, including the right to privacy, protections for women against discrimination, they are at best in legal limbo and subject to change due to new interpretations of legal precedent. Women of color are especially in jeopardy. Congress must therefore move fast to approve this resolution and formalize the ratification of the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution. 234 years is long enough for the women and the girls of our country to receive a formal assurance by their federal government that the, quote, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex, end quote. I thank the senator for bringing this resolution up for a vote, and I urge all of my colleagues to join us in an enthusiastic support of SJR 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. Senator Pan. Thank you, Madam President, Senators. I too rise in strong support of SGR 12 on behalf of the chair of the Asian American Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus, which this resolution which urges Congress to ratify the Equal Rights Act as the 28th Amendment to the Constitution. This act is essential to guarantee equal rights regardless of one's sex. Unfortunately, we have seen in the API community that women have been particularly targeted with hate. According to Stop AAPI Hate, more than half of the hate incidents reported since the start of the pandemic have been reported by women. And earlier this year is the one-year anniversary of the shooting in Atlanta where AAPI women were targeted and killed. Unfortunately, women are still not seen as equals, and part of that culture stemmed from antiquated policies that previously encouraged it, and we still, of course, have more work to do. The Equal Rights Act takes actions to ratify and guarantee in the Constitution that all Americans are created equal. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on SGR 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pan. Senator Bradford.
Thank you, Madam President. And as chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, I stand in support of SJR 12, which recognizes Equal Rights Act as the 28th Amendment of our Constitution. SJR 12 also calls on the U.S. Congress to approve House Resolution 891, authored by our former member and California's own Congresswoman Jackie Speer. Women have been great sources of inspiration and leadership for many generations since the origin of this country. It is often stated, if you want something said, you ask the man. If you want something done, you ask the woman. It's also said it's a man's world, but we all know a woman makes it go round. Women from all backgrounds have won important advancements in the movement. They've helped shape policies in society and culture that move our states, I should say, and our country in the right direction. Despite all of the accomplishments, milestones, and historical positions women have held, they are still not legally protected against gender and sex discrimination in the United States Constitution. The Equal Rights Amendment, which provides an explicit constitutional guarantee of sex equality, is critical to filling the fundamental aspects excluded from the Constitution. In 1921, 1 year after the passage of the 19th Amendment, women's rights leaders proposed the first Equal Rights Amendment after the demands for gender equality resurfaced. The ERA was subsequently introduced in Congress for the first time in 1923 and passed Congress in 1972. 35 of the 38 states quickly ratified the amendment needed for it to become part of the Constitution. However, on January 27, 2022, Virginia is the final state to ratify this amendment. What's the final state, I should say? Women have and continue to be a pivotal part of our society. We should ensure that one of the most developed countries in the world, that they have equal constitutional protection from gender and sex discrimination. Women face discrimination of unequal pay, workplace harassment, pregnancy discrimination, and domestic violence at a higher rate than men, particularly those who are from historically marginalized communities. As we look to recover equitably as a state and a nation, we must do whatever we can to protect all Americans from discrimination. The Equal Rights Amendment provides a stronger constitutional basis for combating sex discrimination and allows Congress more authority to enact laws that ensure sex equality. California has long been at the forefront when it comes to women's rights, and that tradition remains today. I made note of Senator Speer authoring this House resolution. Senator Dianne Feinstein, as well as Senator Alex Padilla, have joined in the efforts to advocate for the same resolution in the Senate as well. Members, let us follow the example of Senator Skinner and our fellow colleagues on the Hill and support SJR 12. I respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Bradford. Senator Wiener.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Matt. Is it on? Oh, there we go, sending me a message. Thank you, Madam President. I rise as Vice Chair of the Jewish Caucus in support of SJR 12 and ask members to vote for it. Our caucus and the Jewish community has been a strong, long supporter of gender equity, and with a long history of amazing Jewish women who have helped lead our country, whether Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Bella Abzug, and so forth. So I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debate on this item? Any further discussion or debate? Hearing seen none, Senator Skinner, would you like to close?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the comments by my colleagues, all extremely spot on in why we need this amendment. 50 years ago, at the point that Congress was setting off the ERA's journey, I was elected the first girl president of my high school. And of course, I was very naive. I thought after that point that, hey, there wouldn't be hardly anything left within a few years that needed to have, women be first. In other words, that within a few years, women in the Supreme Court, women as president, women as governors, women as CEOs, you name it. Well, like I said, I was naive. 50 years later, we are still in a situation where there are very few women CEOs, very few women on corporate boards, though thank goodness the California legislature helped that in California. No woman governor yet, in California, no woman president. There's a glass ceiling, there is unequal pay, and gender bias is still cooked into our laws, our practices, our societal culture. And it's time for that to end. Now, will having the ERA be the 28th Amendment end that overnight? By no means, but it at least ensures that gender cannot be the basis, that discrimination in any law or any practice. And if that occurs, then by that constitutional right, those laws can be struck down, those practices can be struck down. And this is why we need the ERA more than ever today. And with that, I ask for your aye vote on SJR 12.